My son, Jacob, and as you can see, he's a gorgeous little boy. Every day he either makes me very happy, very sad, or sometimes I even want to throw him into the deep blue sea. And I love him very much, and I'm very proud of him. Jacob is very bright. He has an extremely fantastic vocabulary, but he has complex behavioural issues, speech and language difficulties, and he learns differently. So what does this mean for Jacob? Well, it means he struggles with transitions and new situations. His world can be very detached, and he can lack empathy. He finds it difficult to understand and to follow instructions, and he struggles in social interactions because he misses the social cues. He has heightened sensitivity to smells, taste, textures, and loud sounds. And he can be very literal, so you have to be careful how you phrase sentences and words with Jacob, because he totally misunderstands them. And he focuses on the detail. He can't see the bigger picture, he cannot see the narrative of the story. He was recently in an assessment with a psychiatrist, and there was this lovely big picture of a frog sitting on a lily pad, and lots of things happening on this pond. And so he was asked what he could see, and he said, the frog's toes are anatomically incorrect. And so he said, well, what can you see? We said, can't you see his toes aren't right? So that's what Jacob sees when he looks at a bigger picture. And also, when Jacob can't cope, his anxiety levels go off the scale. We get big emotions, often from the tiniest, smallest of triggers. Sometimes he runs, and when he runs, I mean he runs, he doesn't stop. I can be chasing him in my Land Rover down the road, and he'll just keep running and running and running. Doesn't matter how often you ask him to stop. Or he can freeze, or he will refuse to move, or he'll kick, he'll hit out, he'll throw. If he has something in his hand, it becomes a weapon, and he'll scratch and he'll bite. So last year, the start of last year, Jacob was removed from mainstream school, and we put him into a new school because we'd changed areas. But it was a primary school attached to a senior school. It was too big, too busy, too noisy, and Jacob just couldn't cope there. And within 2 months, he had a complete meltdown. In fact, he totally destroyed his classroom, and he tested all the safeguards the school had in place. So he was put into a pupil referral unit. And this is basically a very safe, secure, controlled environment where there's a high staff level. And they're there to support and assess and try to understand the cause of the behaviour of the children who go there. But it was a 40-minute journey in the taxi for him, and so most mornings it was another battle for the escort and myself to get Jacob actually get into the taxi. And home life became more and more challenging, more difficult. He became more uncooperative. He was a very lost and unhappy little boy. And the aggressive outbursts increased in frequency and in intensity. His behaviour was unpredictable, huge emotional responses, everything was a 10. He was becoming more and more angry, distressed, and he would even hurt himself. And we all worried for his future, and our family life as this continued. Then, around this time last year, I found a terror, and so I started to learn about them and using the oars myself. And at the same time, at one of Jacob's assessments, the professionals who'd been assessing decided that it was most likely that he was on the autistic spectrum. Pending further assessments, it takes about 12 to 15 months to get an actual diagnosis for autism. So I started to do my own research on terror and the oils and autism. And I found that lots of parents were having excellent results using Balance, which is our grounding wellness blend. So I began to use Balance on Jacob. Now, as I said, Jacob is very sensitive to smell, so of course he didn't like the smell of Balance. So after careful negotiation, we agreed that I would put it on the soles of his feet, under the covers at night, and before I put his socks on in the morning. Well, we started to see improvements almost straight away. In fact, we just thought it was wishful thinking. He was calmer, he was more cooperative. The anger outbursts decreased in intensity and in frequency, and he became more loving, less detached, and far more happier. and he started to begin to engage in school, and he started to read and write and do maths, something he'd never done before, and at this point he was just 8. And so I started then to introduce peace to help with his anxiety, which perhaps I should have taken a bit more this morning. Anyway, Jacob began to thrive. Life became calmer, less stressed, and more normal, and we stopped walking on eggshells. Jacob now takes peace into school on his own, and when he needs it, he'll apply it. And in fact, his teacher laughs because she was very sceptical. She didn't, when I first told her about the oils, she was very sceptical about them. But she says actually when he takes them out, and remember she's got other little difficult children in the class with him, she says she sees the whole class relax. Everybody calms down, not just Jacob, as he starts to breathe, as they start to breathe and the aromas form the peace. Jacob's always going to have to negotiate his way through the world, and he'll have to learn the rules, even though he doesn't often, most of the time, understand why they're there. He now has his educational healthcare package in place, and so he's meant to be transitioning to a special school, which is basically an hour away still. But because he's made so much progress in the last 10 months, because we got his emotions in check with the doTERRA oils, instead at this moment he's transitioning back into our local primary school, and I'm so proud of him.